Hey, the thing that's the heaviest on my heart right now, and I'm a teacher, so I'm asking my students what they're doing. And, you have students saying, oh, I'm going to learn how to play the ukulele. I'm going to learn a million different languages while I'm home. I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. And there is this productivity inside of us that just won't stop no matter what. And I want us to take a breath. And I want us to recognize that right now, the call isn't to be productive. The call is to be present. And what that means to be present to is trauma and tragedy. Inside of our homes, outside of our windows. I think about the book of Nehemiah. And a lot of times we tell that story as the building of a wall, but it really is the rebuilding of a people. And we see that whole process. The first step that Nehemiah takes isn't picking up a hammer and a chisel, but it's bowing down to the ground and being so present with the Lord. It says, when I heard these things, I sat down and wept, and for some days I mourned and I fasted and I prayed. And so the call that I would ask all church planners, we have that DNA that says, are you a go-getter? That's what they're looking for in assessments. Can you just go rally the troops while people follow you, charge the hill? And yet right now that DNA has to be forged into another model, a model that allows us to be present to the pain, present to ourselves. Harry, you talked about sowing earlier. Maybe the call that I would say is, are we allowing Christ, are we allowing the Spirit to sow into our souls right now? We'll come out of this shredded, if not. If we continue to just push, we will come out of this with our hearts absolutely torn, ragged to the ground. So allow yourself to have your soul sown into by the Spirit in those still spaces, even in the midst of times such as these. That's the heaviest burden on my heart right now, is for the souls of people.
Yeah, I'd like to point to this piece of art that I have right here. It was made by a Nicaraguan artist, and I have named her Lydia. This woman that's by the river reminds me like Lydia in the book of Acts. Lydia in the book of Acts was not bothered at all by the fact that there was no synagogue in Philippi. She went to the river. That was the resource that she had. And at the river with the women, they prayed and they worshiped God until Paul and Silas came along and shared the rest of the gospel with them. And then Lydia, in her entrepreneurial spirit, became the first home church leader and house church leader, and her house became a base of operations that supported Paul and Silas's ministry for years to come. And we wouldn't have the book of Philippians if it hadn't been for Lydia, who was worshiping and praying and maybe washing by the river like the Nicaraguan women. And so we have to learn that the resources, like we have to look at Acts 1 and Acts 2 and the whole book of Acts to see how did the church do it? What did they have? When we look at Acts 2:42 that we often quote, they said they pulled all their resources together. Greg Kappas in the chat was kind of reminding us a little bit about that, how they just got together in homes, and then they got together in corporate worship as well, but they looked at what they had, and that was abundant, right? And so when we think with a Western mentality, we forget that we already have a lot. And Lydia was unbothered by the fact that there was no building. The church was happening at the river. And that's where the power was. The power was in prayer. I think back to times of crises in my Nicaraguan church growing up. I'm the daughter and the granddaughter of a pastor. And in the earthquake of 72 in Nicaragua, I remember the mothers of the church, the matriarchs of the church saying, oh yeah, the walls fell down, but we met under a tree. Right? And so under the tree, the women of the church were feeding the people. They were cooking and feeding the people. That may seem like, well, that's just really basic and really small. Well, that was church. You feed the bodies and you feed the souls. We're having to unlearn so much of what we have been taught and how we have been socially conditioned to create this production on a Sunday morning. And I think the Spirit is inviting us to look into the book of Acts of how we can be creative now with the abundance that we do have.